What we just witnessed, my friends, was a haunting. Yes, there is a ghost in them thar pages. Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today we are going to take a fully spoilery look at Kaiju number 8, Chapter 98. The one where the ghost of Isao Shinomiya comes back to haunt the Defense Force in their battle against Kaiju number 9. Now, I am going to jump right into the spoilers, so if you don't want that, you can click away now. To give you time to do that, I will humbly suggest that if you haven't gotten a Christmas present yet for someone, you can check out the links below this video or in my bio to get yourself a copy of one of my books. Humans Are Weird deals with the absurdity of human nature in collections of short, absurd science fiction stories appropriate for all ages. Meanwhile, the Dying Embers universe deals with the fragility of the human psyche and soul. Not all ages, but most ages. Now, on to the spoilers for Kaiju number 8. Way back when between chapters 33 and 35, I made an observation to my good friends Dan Exclaims and Grim Saber. By the way, welcome back to the YouTube grind, Grim. Good to see you back. But either of them might remember, one of the first theories I postulated was that the good Director General was not long for this world. My evidence. The way the man moved. Now, by now we've all internalized that Matsumoto is a master of capturing movement in very few panels. And it was clear that Isao Shinomiya was not a young man. And to top that off, he was clearly a warrior. A little stiffness in his movements would have made sense, but Isao simply took this too far. When he turned his head to the side, he couldn't get his chin very far around and had to turn his whole body or just his eyes. His back was always ramrod straight, even when his second in command was reclining in his chair in meetings. While the Director General could move fast in his fight with Kafka, it was usually in straight lines of attack, and the Director General's weapon provided an easy explanation for all of this. For years, Isao had been taking a punching machine and attaching it to his spine and punching monsters. And Matsumoto made that show in every panel the man was in through his stiff, painful movements. Now, where am I going with all this? From the get-go, I have been watching every detail of how Isao moved and how he talked. I had a pretty good mental map of how Matsumoto presents the good Director General. In this chapter, I just kept seeing Isao again and again. When Kaiju number 9's main body stood to fight Mina, those were Isao's stances. The moves that Kaiju number 9 used were the combat style that Isao had perfected. Those were the moves, those are the stances that Vice Captain Hoshina passed on to Kafka. The cadence of Kaiju number 9's voice, the pattern of his words, the choice of terms were that of an old soldier. And I just want to take an aside here to praise the translator, David Evelyn. Translating Japanese to English is a tricky art in the best of times. We all remember the Japanese-English semi-dictionaries in the backs of the old manga that explain the tricky parts. To capture the idea of what is being said accurately is hard enough. To capture subtle elements of tone, like a previously chaotic non-human entity shifting to a military cant while translating, is remarkable work. I don't know how well Matsumoto handled it, but bravo, Evelyn. It isn't just how Isao moved and spoke either. In this chapter, we get peeks into Isao's mind, into his judgments and thoughts. Why is Kaiju number 9 so utterly focused on capturing Mina? Why does Kaiju number 9 believe with such fervor that Mina will be the ace in the hole that he needs? Because that is what Isao Shinomiya believed. We saw the flashback where Isao grimly announced to Baldy that Mina was going to be the core of the Defense Force. On a side note, this might be a weakness that the Defense Force can exploit in the future. If Kaiju number 9 is limited by the focuses and drives of the humans it absorbs and integrates, the Force might be able to map out its plans more easily if they can learn this, figure out who he's integrated most recently, and how that would be affecting it. This is also, in my eyes, a distinct clue that Kaiju number 9, in some far weaker, more primitive form, absorbed Hikaru Shinomiya, Kokoru's mother, back after she took down Kaiju number 6. We we see him reference number 6 here. And we clearly see that Kaiju number 9 got his drive to capture Mina from absorbing a man who was driven to use Mina's power, who was a touch obsessed with Mina's power. In that case, where did Kaiju number 9's obsession with Director General Isao Shinomiya come from? Who did Kaiju number 9 absorb who was that focused specifically on Isao? Who had that much faith in Iso's power? Also, with the first time we saw Kaiju number 9, he was attacking Kikoru. And why would he be just happen to be attacking Kikoru? While any Defense Force officer might have admired Isao and seen him as powerful, very few of them, almost none, would have had known of, and definitely wouldn't have had that sort of faith in Kikoru. The most logical answer would be that Isao's doting wife and Kikoru's doting mother, who had trained beside him, knew of his power and knew of Kikoru's drive, would have been the one to give Kaiju number 9 that focus. In the here and now, we again see Isao's knowledge and priorities at play in the attack on the shelters and in how Kaiju number 9 refers to the other Defense Force officers. Isao had 2 priorities. Keep the civilians safe and keeping his officers safe and healthy, and we see that in the dark mirror of Kaiju number 9's attack priorities. What about the hurt and fatigued officers Kaiju number 9 asks to direct Kafka's attention away from Mina? Isao didn't just want his brother and sister officers alive. He wanted them to be healthy, happy, safe. More than that, this is a testament to how much Isao not only trusted, but respected Kafka. By the end of their short relationship, Isao firmly believed that Kafka's highest priority would be protecting the civilians in the shelters. Isao believed that Kafka's goals, his aims, would be to keep his brother officers safe. Isao not only trusted Kafka's intentions, but he trusted Kafka's judgment as well. Isao believed that when faced with hard decisions, that Kafka would stick to his principles and not listen to blind him. This chapter is a heartbreaking testimony to how deeply Kafka impressed Isao in the short time that they knew each other. These 2 men developed a deep respect for each other, and I am 100% here for that kind of relationship. Bare as the back without a brother behind it and all that. As heartbreaking as it is that Kaiju number 9 is using Isao's trust and faith as a weapon, it must have been a comfort for Isao to have, as he dissolved into Kaiju number 9's brain, it must have been a comfort for him to have that much trust and faith in the ones he was leaving behind. On a side note, Mina has specially designed weapons that to contain the raw power she is able to draw on in this fight. And we do get to see her draw and actually use her tiny little sidearm. Now, I am sure that even her personal sidearm has been juiced up to take some extra damage, but there's no doubt in my mind that it is still getting severely damaged by having that much energy force through it. See, in real life you have the humble, the common shotgun, which main feature is that you can control the amount of power and the type of shot that is being fired by how much and what kind of powder or slug or ball shot that you put in the shells behind your ammunition. If you ever researched making your own shotgun shells, one of the first pieces of information you will find is a warning to fight the temptation to overload the shells. The muzzle and mechanisms take damage from every shot, and if you put in too much power, you won't have a functional shotgun for long. Now, in this instance, Mina only gets off a few shots from her sidearm, but they were powerful shots. Cannon-level blasts that even Kaiju number 9 thought it was wiser to dodge than to tank. I sincerely doubt that such a small weapon could take many of those. Of course, Kaiju number 9 ended the fight too quickly for that to become a factor, but it did leave me wondering how many power shots one of Mina's sidearms was good for before it just melted down. But what do you think, my wonderful viewers? Did you see the ghost of Isao Shinomiya haunting this chapter? Tell me what you saw in the comments, hit that like and subscribe button, and peace out, my wonderful viewers. Humans are weird, we took a vote. The second book of Human Absurdity is now available in audiobook format. Everywhere where audiobooks are sold, Barnes & Noble, Google Play, Kobo by Rakuten, and of course, Audible on Amazon. So you can now get a copy of the audiobook format of all 70,000 words of human absurdity.